So in this video, I wanted to show the process that I use for just getting some of the excess moisture out of the worm system, and how I harvest that out, and it actually then becomes a valuable liquid nutrient solution for my indoor garden. A quick shot here. This is the indoor garden. I'm growing lettuce, spinach, some herbs, and they're in different stages of growth, just because it's like a form of succession planting. Lettuce, after a few cuttings, the flavor starts to change. So but this is what I do in the wintertime when it's snowy outside. I live just outside of Calgary, Alberta, so we get a pretty harsh winter, and we're zone 3, so even then we don't have a very long growing season. Sorry, so it helps to improvise. Anyways, back to the matter at hand. So this is a bin. This bin's not ready to be harvested yet. I'll let it build, or the material build, till it's close to the air holes in the buckets, and I do have holes on top just in case it gets overfilled. But what I do, just as a routine, is each morning or thereabouts, I come down and I'll try to process a few of the bins, either add more material or harvest them completely. It's just a good way to not have everything pile up for one day, one weekend, that kind of thing. So if we look down in here, this is all extract that's come out of the bins as the paper pulp and compost mix has broken down. It's the interesting thing is that I find, anyways, is that initially everything is like a sponge-like mass, but as the material gets further broken down by the worms, it's as if there's this release of excess moisture, and the moisture consistency of the castings is quite a bit it's grainier, and I notice that this typically only happens towards the end of the process, where all the material is close to being broken down. But if we look at this, it has a few of these little white bugs on them, which are composters. They're harmless, but it's a dark brown, almost like a molasses colored liquid. And because the system was never it never had raw material, we don't have to worry about that whole anaerobic skunky smelling liquid. This started as compost and newspaper, so we're already in the safe zone that way. So it's also a chance to clean things. If this liquid were to build up to the point where it approached the bottom of the working bucket, we could have some problems with anaerobic, the system going anaerobic, at least at the base of the working system. So this just helps me to keep things clean. There are one or two little worms that made their way down there. Not usually a problem, and they go for a bit of a swim. So what I'll do is I'll actually take the bucket, and this is where I was saying I used to use the spigot here for drainage, but now this is much faster. And all I'll do is I have that strainer with the cheesecloth or paint cloth in it, and I pour it in. Sometimes the bucket has a little bit more sediment in it than what we have here, but the whole idea is that sediment will get strained out. Again, a few little worms in there. Not sure if the lighting is that great to show it. But then I'll also I have that container with water that I drained off as I was creating the pulp paper mix. And this is it, literally gray water. And I like to just swish it around. So it's not a super thorough cleaning, but it's 80-20 rule. It's what I call a good enough cleaning. because this really isn't a working part of the system. It really is just a reservoir. So I'll pour that in there. It also does double duty as kind of just cleaning out the strainer a little bit as well. Okay. So I can put that bucket down. And sometimes if there is a lot of sediment in that reservoir bucket, it'll take a much longer time for the water to work its way down, and sometimes I'll use something like this little hand shovel just to work the material around so the water drains better. I want it reasonably well drained, and I'll show you why in a second. Okay, so look at what we have here. So this is, again, you could put this directly onto your plants. It's not going to burn. The worms have been strained out. So we don't have to worry about any escapees. But I'll pour it into this larger bucket that I have, which is where I'm constantly aerating the mix. And again, there's not a lot of risk of the system of this liquid going anaerobic, but just as a precaution, I like to have air flowing through the system. Through these aquarium pumps, as well as a few air stones at the bottom. And when it's this full, I'll actually, and I think I showed this briefly in the previous video, that's when I'll use the strainer, another smaller bucket, allow the material to come through. And if it seems like I'm just really straining a lot, it's because there are worms that get through even with all these precautions, and I don't really need the larger sediments in my liquid feed. So there's no reason to, I mean, you could, honestly, you don't have to strain it. You really can do the whole thing without it. But it's just a preference. And so this one, it's actually a finer strainer medium with the kitchen strainer and the paint strainer, whereas this one is more like a deep fryer type basket with the paint strainer on top. And let's just assume that I had way more sediment in here. What I then do is I'll take head over to the flow through bin that I have, and I tip it in. And I just try to scrape around the sides. This is also a chance to recover any worms that did end up in the catchment bucket. They'll end up in the system, and hopefully go on to live a happy, healthy, productive life. I mean, it is a pretty good life for a worm, I guess. You get disturbed once every few months, but then just eating, pooping, and reproducing the rest of the time. Anyways, that's how we do the liquid harvesting for our worm systems. I hope you enjoyed the video. We'll see you next time.